Girl, you the big, and she love me when I'm in it, and she never be pretending, nothing is real. She gon' tell you what she bought it, cause she know you can't afford it. Know you can get it, looking exquisite, no competition.
Hello, 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 hello. Welcome to the East Spot. It is Friday. We made it. Another week down. More about me. Let's get to Jaki Shelton Green. Hello, Jaki Shelton Green. I am so happy to have you here. Happy Friday. Thank you for being here with us today. And how are you?
Hello, Camille. I am fabulous now that I'm with you because you just make everything fabulous whenever you show up. I'm good. I'm good. I am trying to lean into what I'm calling a righteous pause for all of us. Excuse me. Not thinking of, how bored I am and I'm not bored, or I am ready to be out in the world, but it's been a really wonderful time to just be creating a world that feels good, that feels really good inside of this pause right now.
Now, what are some of the things that you're doing during this pause? Are you creating new work? Are you just taking it easy? Are you taking classes? Are you still teaching? Because you also teach at Duke Center of Documentary Studies. I'm sorry, I just blanked for a
Right.
minute.
So I only teach the winter semester, so this is
Okay.
not my teaching semester. I'm journaling, but I've not had time to really do my own writing. I'm so busy. This week I completed a 500 and some page reading of a novel that I had to write a blurb for, a fabulous forthcoming novel by someone. I've written about 6 other blurbs for manuscripts. I have one more book to write a review for. I have an upcoming writing assignment from Our State magazine that's due by the end of May. And then I have a huge project that I'm collaborating on with Flutronics out of Chicago. So I have that project, and I have a project with the music department at Michigan State that I'm working on. So, I have all of that. All of my work has been postponed. I was in Asheville when the governor said to come in and stay in. So I came home, and I'm supposed to be in Ireland right now, but that was canceled, and my teaching in Morocco was canceled this summer. So I am very much here, doing the other work I have to do as a poet laureate, and not just as a poet laureate, but as an independent contractor. I have a lot of work.
Well, let's start a little bit. I mean, I realize I know so much about you, but at the same time, maybe some of the viewers don't. Can you tell everyone how you got your, not can you? I feel like even talking to a writer, I know better than that. Will you share with us how you got your start in writing? I love this story. So,
well, when I was very young, I grew up in a very rural Orange County community like you. And it was my grandmother who actually, on Sunday mornings when I would be restless and fidgety in church, she always came to church with little notebooks that she would give to me. And at a very young age, I thought I was writing, that I was actually writing books. And then when I became a teenager, I was still very, very bored in church. And I actually would bring my own journals and slip them into church. And I was fascinated with the world going on around me, the women, their hats, their dress, these beautiful women that I would see during the week, in their work clothes. They worked at the bank, or they were domestics, or they worked at the laundry. And on Sunday, they outdid Eartha Kitt and Diana Ross. I mean, they were just amazing black butterflies, and I wrote about them. And I'm still writing about them, I guess. But that's how I got my early start. I went away to a Quaker boarding school when I was in the 10th grade, and being out of the nest in a New England, well, in a Pennsylvania setting, with people from all over the world. It was very challenging and very different. I turned to my writing. And that's when writing became very, very, very serious to me. And, I started publishing. My first book I published in 1974. And that was the first of my 8 books, my 8 publications.
Now, when you first started writing, did you have an idea of what kind of career you wanted to have with writing? I mean, do you feel like you're following that path, or did it just, as opportunities came your way, you just started shifting into a different writer or so on?
Well, I never had a definitive path as a writer. My life's work has been education. I have a K-3 degree, so I taught in public elementary schools. Then I have a master's in community economic development. I worked for many years for Legal Services of North Carolina as a public benefits paralegal and a community economic development consultant. I worked for the Department of Agriculture as a food and nutrition counselor. I worked as a 4-H counselor. So I had this widespread. I've always known that my life was about service. So all of my jobs, all of my life skill jobs have been about being in public service. While I was doing those jobs at Legal Services, Department of Agriculture, and everywhere else, I was the executive director of a community center at one time. I was director of a teen youth program for the YWCA. While I was doing all those jobs, I was still writing. Writing was the thing I did at night. Writing was the thing I did on the weekends. So I just kept publishing, even though I was doing all these other things. I never really called myself writer. I never felt that I had given myself the permission to step out and say, I'm an artist, I'm a writer. So I've always had the other job. Artists always talk, don't quit your day job. People traditionally have like, you're going to be what? So I did not grow up saying I was going to be an artist. People in my family are typically teachers. All my family, my cousins, my aunts, they're all uncles, they're all educators. I was kind of always the oddball out. And I was a wanderer. And it wasn't, so this is going to sound strange because I'd published several books, but it wasn't until 2004 that I quit my job. I retired myself, wasn't old enough to retire then, but I retired myself in 2004. I was director of development for a multi-million-dollar nonprofit, and I decided it was time to write. It was a time to be the writer. I was doing the writing, but it was time to be the writer. So I quit my job and I came home and I was terrified because I realized I have no income. I have no source of income.
Yeah.
But when I met my husband, the first thing he said to me on our first date, he said, what would you do if money and time were not issues, were not factors? What would you do if you had all the time and all the money to support you? And I said, I would be the writer that I want to be. I said, I'm writing, but I'm not being the writer. There's a difference. And he said to me, he said, sounds like you need a plan. And I was like, oh, he's a planner. I was like, oh. Well, here we were 2004, and I needed to walk away from a job that was really holding my creative juices hostage. I wasn't creative. At the end of the day, I was totally exhausted. So my creativity wasn't getting any juice from me. And I was depressed and just felt like I was working for the money, And he said, quit your job. And I thought, we can't do that. And he said, yeah, you can do that. He said, if you believe that we're in charge and we're the ones that pay the bills and put the food on the table, then you're already totally mistaken. He was like, we can do this. But he gave me some walking papers, like you have to close your bookstore account and you have to give me those 2 credit cards and you can't go out and buy 4 pair of shoes in a week and you can't,
Oh
Yeah.
no.
So,
I can relate to these sacrifices.
right. So, I was willing though to make those sacrifices in order to be home and be inside of that space where I really got to define myself as a writer. That was 2004. And the end of that summer, I had already completed a manuscript. Once I figured out what it meant to just be still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was that feeling like to just when you completed your manuscript, knowing that you had taken the leap, you had finished your book, and I mean, I'm sure you had to be super excited and also just really pleased with yourself that you were doing your dream.
Well, at that point, it was my sixth book.
Okay.
But I hadn't published in a very long time because I needed to support family. Before I had met my husband, I was a divorced mother raising three children, you know, one in college, and a few years later, another one in college. So I embraced it as it was my time. And I just needed to seize that time, to step inside of that space that I had created for myself. And more importantly, I'd given myself those permissions. So in terms of what was different about handing off that manuscript, it was intentional writing. It was writing I'd made space for. That summer, no, the next summer, I went to Central America and did a month-long writing residency.
Oh wow.
You know, I had never given myself that permission to just go be still by myself. So it was different. You know, it was very different because it was not my writing on the weekends, writing when I could catch the time. It
Right.
was intentional, focused, and affirmed.
Right. I think a lot of writers dream of that. Well, at least you see that in the movies where the writers go off to some cabin to work on a book and in isolation, and they don't have to worry about bills, jobs, other or raising a family like a lot of women sometimes have to that are writers. And just to hear your story of your husband supporting you, letting you go, not letting you, but
Mhm.
giving you the space of being able to take that time. And then I just I feel so proud of you because you were able to do that, but at the same time, so many other writers wanna take that leap. What encouragement would you give them about why they should do it?
Well, I keep using the word permissions because for me, it is about the permissions that women grant themselves. We take care of everybody. Everyone comes to us. We save everybody, not just our families, but other folks' families. We save our communities. Uh, we do the right thing when we are choosing our candidates in the voting place. It's us. And sometimes we have to unload. Sometimes we have to lift the things that we should not be carrying, do not need to be carrying, allow other people to carry them, and set them aside. So my advice is one, I think in this day and time, you don't have to we don't have to be siloed into thinking I only get to be one thing. I mean, I have all of this other background in nonprofit governance. I mean, at any time I get a phone call, can you fly to Seattle? We need a consultant to do a board retreat with us next week. That has nothing to do with my writing. So I don't have to choose between being, like I can be all these things. And I'm not talking about being superwoman,
Mhm.
but just having the notebook, having the toolkit of knowing what our skills are, and also asking ourselves, what new skills do I want? But my advice is, if you really want to be a writer, is you have to declare that. You declare that first with yourself. Now, in this age of technology, in this age of people getting immediate validation from social media, a lot of people don't want to do due diligence. A lot of people will contact me and say, well, I have this manuscript. It really needs to be published. Can you help me get published? And I'm like, well, first of all, I'm not a publisher, but, well, like, what's it about? And they tell me what it's about. And I was like, well, You do know this is a narrative that we hear about a lot. Yeah, but my story's different. Well, there are 1,000 oh woe is me stories.
Right.
But as a writer, the tools will help you understand how your story might be cooler than the one you read. That's having the techniques. That's having the skills to be your own editor, to self-edit. Or when people say, well, everybody at my church and everybody in my family tells me I'm a fabulous writer. Well, they're supposed to. But are you willing to, one of the things that was important for me early on was not to get boxed into, oh, you're a great African-American writer. Like, no, I'm not going to live in that little pool. Like, I want to be in the ocean. So to be in that ocean, I had to make sure that I was equipped with the swimming skills to swim in that ocean. I never wanted to be the big fish in the little pond. It's more important to know how to swim out further and further out. And so I pushed myself. And that's why for many years, I never named myself poet, because I felt like I had not done the work. Creativity is medicine, but it's also a deep dig. People think they just sit down and write. I mean, I have people call me and say, oh, I just wrote the next best novel, and they send it to me, and it is fraught full of misspelled words and grammar mistakes and nothing. There are no skills inherent in this at all. No editorial process. So we have to do the work, find the mentors, find the classes. In this day and time, you don't even have to go take a class, go online. We can teach ourselves. There's so much material available to us. And there are some people who, they sit down for the first time and they do write magnificent bodies of work. But that's rare. For most of us, it's a process.
Now, what is your process that you like when you're first starting a manuscript, or maybe even we'll start even as small as like your first poem, or not first poem, but when you're starting a poem, what's your process of getting started? Do you have, and what inspires you?
Well, what inspires me, this is my process. So I use journals like bank accounts. How do we use a bank account? Our bank account, we make deposits, we make withdrawals. So when I went to Central America to do this retreat, I took 13 journals with me. 13 journals that I had been keeping over a span of years. I may be standing cooking, and all of a sudden, I do my best writing when I'm cooking. Because I believe that we're always writing. We may not be scribing, but we're always writing. The material is always bubbling. It's always coming to the top. So when something is coming to the top and I'm in the middle of dinner, or I'm talking to Camille live, I can't stop to write the poem, but I can scribble 3 lines that are coming to me while Camille is talking to me. Those 3 lines are a deposit into my journal. A paragraph. I'm sitting in the theater and suddenly I get this from what I'm watching unfolding on the screen, or on stage. I grab the back of the program and I write that really quick. That goes into my journal. It may be 5 lines, not even knowing where those 5 lines are going to lead me, or what they're going to grow up and become, or if they even are part of anything, but I deposit them into my bank account. So when I went to this retreat, this writer's colony, it was an artist colony, I had these journals, and I just opened them all up. They started talking to each other. I came back with the manuscript for Breath of the Song, my 6th book. I came back with that manuscript from those journals. So that's my process, is I'm always journaling, so I always have material, if that makes sense. As a documentary poet who uses primary and secondary sources for reframing a current event or historical event, I do a lot of research. So I have folders and folders full of content for, for new poems. Like today, someone reached out to me and said, you wrote that poem a few years ago called "Oh My Brother," which focuses on police brutality. And the person said, "You need to read it today."
Mhm.
So so the material is all around us, just waiting for us to pick it up. But that's my process, paying attention. I'm a gatherer, so I'm always gathering sources.
Mhm.
There's a particular manuscript I've been working on for years about juke joints
Oh,
in the South. It's a documentary piece that one day will actually be published. Hopefully when I finish it. Um, but that's my process, is to gather, to file, and then I bring it all together when the timing is right to do it.
mhm. Now, when you're dealing with things as heavy as police brutality or even historical events from the past, how do you how do you go through that without still carrying it? Because I feel like a lot of people right now, myself included, are feeling the weight of what's been going on, not just with the pandemic, but just with the recent release of another videotape of
Mhm.
another Black man being shot. Like, how do you not let that affect? I mean, I know it has to affect you, but how do you write about it and still not carry it, or how do you deposit it? Like, and without it
Well,
taking effect. Yeah.
as a writer, I tend to create. For me, my artistry, my creativity, my poetry is a container.
Mhm.
It's a container for my sorrow, my sadnesses, my joys, disappointments, celebrations. They're containers. So I allow myself to go inside of all of the emotions that one could be experiencing
Mhm.
for this moment in time with the murder of this young brother. I allow myself to be present to that. And then there's a distillation process that happens for me when I start writing. I allow the energy of the loss, the energy of, I always have to go to a very visceral, physical space of thinking. I think about my own daughter's death and how the visceral experience of it is I still get whiffs of her,
Mm.
what she smelled like at the end of her life. I still get whiffs of her. And I have to, those whiffs can either drive me nuts or I can translate them into something else. And so that's my process for, like, how do you handle, the emotions that come up? And I say very, very, very tenderly, allowing myself to let them go wherever they take me. And then what is the language for that? For me, it's finding the language for that mother, whatever the mother is experiencing right then in that moment, is what is the language of her first teardrop that falls on the cheek of that boy? What is the language of her holding his hand and it is cold as ice? And how does every time she touch ice, she feels like she's touching her son's hand? So for me, it's a very vulnerable process um, that I feel like, poets are the legislators of the world, as Shelley, the poet, said many, many centuries ago. We are the legislators of the world in terms of, um, the newspaper reporter says, it is raining in Durham. It rained 8 inches on Wednesday. The writer, the poet, says, my toes were all squishy and wishy as I ran through the rain, holding my lover's hand. I mean, we experienced the rain. The journalist tells us that it rained, but we tell you what the rain is. We show you. You feel it, you taste it, you hear it when we give the weather report. So that's the process is how we distill these emotions into something that we can hold. And when we build those containers, other people can dip into those containers. Because my writing is not worth anything if there's not a universal human code, that someone who even does not look like me, they should be able to find themselves inside of the writing. My humanity should be the bridge. When I'm writing, I'm thinking about the purpose, utilitarian, like, what is the purpose for this poem? How will it function off the page? How, it's not about just having books on bookshelves, but when those books go out to the world, when those poems are heard, how does a mother hold it? How does a 14-year-old who doesn't believe in themselves, how does that poem change them? And I'm not saying that I'm so great that I change lives, but what I'm saying is that's the role of the artist, to disrupt, but to also help us hold in a different kind of way.
Now, you've been doing this since, like you mentioned, since the 70s. And I'm sure with everything that's been going on, you've seen so many different waves and values and different things going. How do you think things are going to change after this pandemic? Like, as far as writing or just arts and entertainment, do you think that now maybe people publicly will start realizing how important it is, because it's the artists that are helping us through this? It's people like you that are lending your voice and having these poems that I mean, I've seen a few that you've even sent to me in my messenger that have changed my day. So you maybe not be changing lives, but you definitely are changing people's days. How do you think that's going to change the process after all of this is hopefully somewhat back to normal?
I think many of us will find a new way to walk into, because we're not going to return to anything. We're going to create a new reality. And for me, it's about reimagining ourselves inside of that new reality. The feedback I'm getting, I'm on, oh my God, I'm probably doing 4 Zooms a day. Before this, I was on a long, lengthy telephone call with somebody about yet another project that relates to this. I just did an ad for the Division of Public Health around disparity with COVID-19.
Okay.
I think many of us are really on point, purposefully, intentionally thinking about how we be better, how we be better. And I didn't say do better, but how we be better. Because I think that what has been very ironic to me, and it's not irony, it just makes perfect sense, that for the first time in many of our lives, we can hear the earth breathing. Her lungs are clean. We've never known her lungs in our lifetime because we've grown up being a part of the pollution. Our fancy cars, our use of power, of natural power. We have so stripped her, disenfranchised. We talk about disenfranchised. Well, let's talk about how we have disenfranchised our mother, the earth. And she's been unhappy for so long. And she's been sending us little pieces of like, okay, y'all keep on.
Yeah.
And now we can't breathe. Now we can't breathe. So for for me, this has been very cathartic, because for these people who've made it a partisan issue, and I don't even want to go there, it's a health issue.
Yeah.
It's a serious health issue. But I hope people see this as a reckoning moment. And I'm not going down any religious bin, but a reckoning moment of how we become who we say we are. We make up a lot of stories about who we are as modern, educated, intelligent people, but we have an opportunity right now to recharter how we move forth. And I think part of this is to do it with baby steps. I think we have to do it gradually. I think we have to try and ease into it, because it is totally, we don't have a handbook for this one. There are no rules. There's no diagram to follow. We kind of have to make it up as we go. But this, for once, it's not about social media that you're trusting for the guidance. It has to come from within. And we have to think about what community building looks like again. Now is the time to really think about when we're talking about we are our brothers and sisters keepers, what does that really mean? What does it really mean? And reading about people who are going to grocery stores and their elders in line who can't pay for their food, but we have to step forth and buy it. We have to carry the food. We have to do many of the things that people in the African American community were doing generations ago. As my 103-year-old mom says, well, we know how to make wood fire. We know how to take one pack of beans and make a week's worth of food. We know how to get some flour, some water, an egg, and make some bread and some salt. So I'm just saying all this to say is I think it's a time for us to be still and rethink, what do we want? We're so used to this country, this society, this culture telling us what we should want. Everybody should want to be wealthy. Everybody should want to live over here. Everybody should want to drive this. Everybody should want to have this many credit cards and be this much in debt. But we have an opportunity to reset our own time frame, our own timeline. There are people who are not returning to jobs. Just got off the phone with a colleague of mine at another university. His university let people go. So there are people not returning to anything that they once had. People losing hours or days from their 40-week, job because employers are trying not to get rid of all their employees. They're trying to salvage. They're cutting hours. But in doing that,
trying to be compliant with all the new rules and paying for all of that as well.
So I just think it's a new time. I'm not, it's a challenge, but I'm trying to not be afraid, but to reimagine what it could look like. And it might be for me, it's more thinking about what communal living looks like. What does it mean? I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but when I
love it.
I lived in New England in the 70s.
Right.
We fast. The community I lived in, the entire school, my former husband and I were professors, were teachers at a very prestigious private school, Ivy League school, and the community fasted. The entire community fasted on Fridays, and we fasted all day. The students would eat in the evening. We would feed the children, but we would add up the money that was not spent on food, and that money would go, back then it wasn't called food bank, but it would go to some food program for indigent people. There also were a group of us that every Friday we had potlucks at each other's house. So, there was always communal gatherings. We know that there were people amongst us there was a couple that were expecting a new baby. They had both lost their jobs, and we would just gather and bring food to their table. I think that thinking about, we all have a table. We all have food. And when I say all of us, probably your listening audience, we have food. But what does it mean when we bring other people to our table? Not taking people food to the food bank, not giving a $5 donation and offering for the food bank, but what does it mean to bring people to our table? What does it mean to have right now? Who knows when we can do anything again? But what would it look like to have a celebration of strangers in the backyard at a cookout? When I say strangers, some of those strangers are people who live 3 doors away from you that you've never met. I live on a street that has 13 houses. I know one family on the street.
Wow. How long have you lived there?
21 years.
Oh my gosh. Oh, so I guess
21 years.
I know a lot of my neighbors, but I'm sure they wish I did. They're not the most welcoming, but another day.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think about these things all the time and I always say when I'm talking about the street I live on that I wish I lived in a community.
Me too.
that I wished I lived in a community like the community I grew up in, or like the community I left in New England, or other communities other communities I'm a part of, but I don't live in.
We'll have to start our own virtual community. That's what
Yeah,
we'll have to do.
well, I think we have that.
Yeah, I think that's what's
You-
going to come out of this is that you're not going to be limited by geography to make your own community anymore because
Well, yeah.
we're all home at the same time right now, and
Mhm.
but
Well, you have this amazing creative platform that continues to gather people from different corners of the universe. And we expand that. Yesterday I taught a class in Saudi Arabia, you
Mm.
know. Yeah. And today I've been getting phone calls. Then immediately they sent me flowers. I was like, that is so cool. I get flowers from people in Saudi Arabia. But yeah, I'm on the phone with people in Morocco doing this. I have a friend who does a Friday night virtual cocktail party
oh, how
every Friday evening. People on there from New York, California, Turkey, Budapest are getting up in the middle of the
where I
night.
used to live. I love Turkey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're right. I mean, I don't, my world is seamless. I've tried to erase those imagined and some real margins that are around us in terms of what we call community and how we embrace community and what community looks like, what it sounds like.
It's definitely not what Hollywood always how they make it look in the movies. Like especially now, we're gonna have to change it all. I'm pretty sure they're rewriting right now all the future episodes to kind of include what's going on now, so it reflects more realistically to all of us. But it's just
Right.
like just thinking forward. It's always the artists that kind of paint that picture because.
Mhm.
And that's why I'm just loving being able to do the e-spot, just to have that time
Mhm.
to really just slowly have the conversation without feeling the rush. Because you just never know what direction the conversation's to go. That's why I'm
Right,
like, keep
right.
talking. Don't worry about it. I love hearing you and just
Yeah.
hearing your process and how you're seeing everything going on, the way you articulate it. Just I like it's a movie in my head, just hearing you talk about it and just making me think even
Right.
more positively about how things can be in the future.
I
And so
think there's going to be an explosion of art. I mean, I'm talking to a lot of people, and I know some dancers who are working on some work right now. You know, I'm giving interview after interview about the medicine inside of all of this. Um, so I think we're going to see an explosion of new art, new choreography, new pieces of, I saw a friend of mine who's a painter. I own some of his work, and he put on his Facebook page today. He says, "Well, if we ever go into galleries again, I have a whole lot to show." And I've seen some of the work, people's responses to this, very powerful,
yeah.
very powerful. And it's going to be a heavy, there's so much loss inside of all of this.
Mhm.
There's so much loss.
And
And there's so much
control.
celebration. There are babies that are being born.
Yeah.
There are couples that are, brave enough to run off to the beach by themselves and get married. They're, and that's why I've been calling it a righteous pause.
Mm.
If we can, think about, we didn't choose this, but we're here.
Yeah.
We're inside of it. What do I do now? And I've been thinking about Gilligan's Island a lot in terms of, they'd always find it, so, I've been thinking about a lot of stuff as Gilligan's Island, like, oh, today we'll plant flowers, oh, that looks interesting, I don't know if you remember Gilligan's Island, but there was always some,
That's the 3-hour tour, right?
that was those people that were lost on some island somewhere.
Right.
It
Okay.
was funny.
My grandparents loved that show. I remember watching it because it was like they were all different types, like a captain and
Right,
an actress or something.
right,
I just remember the 4-hour tour,
yeah,
the theme
right,
song.
right. Anyway,
But I didn't know if you meant that or the book. So then I was like, oh, didn't
oh
read
no,
the
no, I
book.
was thinking about the TV sitcom.
Okay.
That's
Perfect.
kind of showing my age here, but Yeah, I mean, every day has been a wonderful day of exploration and newness. We've been planning up a storm and transplanting plants and watching plants and watering plants, and we've invited a young couple to garden in our garden space in the back because uh, I'm just too tired. I don't feel like doing it, but
Yeah.
I still want fresh vegetables. And this is a young family that's like, yeah, we'll come take you up on your offer of having this free land. I just want to be inside of the celebration coming out of it. And when I say the celebration, there will be many people coming out of it who will be grieving. And how do we help them? How do we hold space for all that we've lost while we're celebrating and being grateful for all that we have?
Right.
It's kind of like my daughter died the day after our anniversary. I mean, she was determined not to die on our anniversary. She was determined. She died 9 o'clock the next morning. So for the first few years, it was like we wouldn't celebrate our anniversary because it didn't feel right. And then one day, like maybe 3-4 years later, my husband said, Imani would really be upset with us. We have to celebrate because celebrating is paying homage to her.
Right.
So but it's that double-edged sword that we're holding right now. And you're right, like inside of all of this, you still manage to kill a Black man who's just out for a job.
Well, I mean,
I mean,
technically
for a
it happened
job.
before the pandemic because it was February.
Oh,
But
was it February? I'm
it
sorry.
was February, but it was just a matter of that they had the videotape for months and didn't arrest them until we saw the videotape. And I think that's the part that where's their humanity through all of this because they knew what was going on during the pandemic and didn't think, oh, well, let me arrest these people who are murderers that could possibly murder more people in our community.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's so frustrating sometimes to just keep having to hear these stories and coming out and just wondering when is it going to change. And one thing that I meant today was my day that I went out to go to all the different grocery stores to pack up food for the month, so to speak. And one of the cashiers that I talk to every time I go into the store, because of course I can't help it. I talk to
Yeah.
everybody. So at every store, I have my own little cashier or a few
Mhm.
cashiers that I'm become friends with. And so we were talking about Maud's death, and we both had mentioned we couldn't watch the videotape. And
Right.
there was a white gentleman behind us, and he made a point of saying, "Don't. There's nothing that could be seen from that. Those guys murdered them, and they should be in prison. I don't know why they're allowed to be free amongst us." And it just, even just hearing him like chime in, because we were both Black women talking to each other and about something that was very heavy on us. And I mean, not saying that because someone of another race noticed the wrongness of it that gave it even more clarity, but it was nice to felt somewhat that community of he also knows it's wrong. So you don't have this whole feeling of us versus them.
Right.
Your own community, people that you live next door or at least close enough to go to the same grocery store. And
Yeah. But I
that,
read a poignant poem by a friend of mine in New York this morning. She posted this morning or yesterday. And the poem's main lines were, "Do white women cry for their sons?" And it was a beautiful poem that just went on and on and on, because every time my husband leaves the house, every time he leaves the house, I'm holding my breath until I hear him pull up in the driveway. If he goes out at night just to run out to get half and half, like when he'll say, "I'm going to get some half and half," well, that should be like a 20-minute trip. When it becomes 45 minutes, I'm on the phone. "Where are you?" And sometimes, like, I'm in the yard talking to so-and-so, and I'm like, I'm on the phone. I'm like, oh. And if it's an hour, I mean, I am pacing. Like, what is he doing? Because out here where I live, and where I live,
right.
in Mebane, my husband bike rides a lot. And, he's not from here. He's from Greenwich, Connecticut. And I've been saying, honey, there are roads, like you just don't like see a road, like, oh, I wonder where that goes. Like, you don't do that here. So he had been riding his bike in this particular section. And one day he said that this man saw him. He was cutting his grass. He turned his mower off. He waved my husband down. He walked out to his mailbox. My husband's standing there. He's like, hey, how you doing today? And the guy says, you live around here? And he goes, no. He says, I don't want to see you around here anymore. Do not ride your bike in this neighborhood anymore. He said, I've seen you over here before. Don't come over here.
Jeez.
Now, this is like just, I mean, it's not a private community where you're like going into a cul-de-sac or, no, it's just a main road. So this is the reality of what it means, to have that fear, to hold that fear. And I try not to be crippled by it, but, as a mother of Black sons and a mother, a husband who's African American, it's having a brother, just
It's not just men though.
doesn't have to be my fault, right? It could be.
Yeah, I mean, you could be at home playing video games with your nephew
Right.
and be gunned down. It doesn't have,
Right. I could open my door and it's mistaken identity.
Right.
So, I kept reading that thread today that people were sending around about being tired. And my response to that is, yes, we're tired, but we are not about to lay down.
Oh no.
We are not about, in that tiredness, we get resurged over and over again. We will not lay down and be just so downtrodden that we can't rise up.
No.
Because our children are depending on first of all, us to tell them the truth.
Right.
And secondly, to give them direction that they too might survive as we have survived.
Right.
With seeds, over and over again, you have tried to destroy all of our seeds, but seeds multiply and we're going to keep on coming. So we're not lying down, it's a time to rise up. And I'm hoping that people are galvanizing their energies, their strengths for the work ahead of us, because there is so much work ahead of us. And I think that this pandemic has shown us, just how vital we are to society, to ourselves, to our children, to our ancestors. So somehow or another, we should be having the think tank talks that everybody else is having.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of that, because you did work in community organizations and, like you said, with the YMCA as well, here locally with the government in North Carolina, what do you think as not just the youth, but just in general, everyone, as far as getting more involved in the community, even though we'll have to do it from home? I volunteer for everything, but what do you think we can do to inspire more people to get involved? Because as long as we're not getting involved, as long as we're being tired or sitting on the sidelines, we're going to keep having DAs who are not going to make charges. We're going to keep having judges that are going to let people like Zimmerman free. We're going to keep electing people who are going to say, oh, but they're mighty fine men on both sides. And there's not, like, we can't keep letting people like these make those laws, make those decisions that are going to affect us every day and our children's education and creating that pipeline from school to prisons. So what would you say, or how can we as a community get more involved to make those changes? Because the only way to make those changes I see is by our vote, by making sure that we amplify those voices that speak for us. But what are some things that you would say that we should do? Because you've seen it happen before and you've gone past it. And also you've worked inside the inner workings, so you know kind of how to make change happen.
Well, first of all, the question for me is always, who's talking to the children? Who has their ear? And I remember when Obama was running, how the young hip hop community, the young actors and actresses, remember Kerry Washington, these young people who took the forefront to talk about the power of the vote.
Right.
You know, who has the attention of our children? I'm 66 years old. I'm in and out of public schools and private schools all the time.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm running into, and I hate to say this, is not just our children, but all the children,
Mm-hmm.
to a certain extent, are lost. Lost in this fantasy world, you know, where they live through social media. And I'm not knocking social media, I appreciate it. But it's like that's where their validation comes from. That's where their sense of what they should be doing and shouldn't be doing. You know, it's like where they get ethics from. A lot happens through this. I had an encounter, it was more than that, with a young, I think this was a middle, it wasn't at a high school, so I guess it was a middle school, junior high school. I guess this girl was 7th or 8th grade.
Okay.
Young sister who was being very disruptive in one of my classes. And I stopped and I said, I really need you to be quiet. And yes, ma'am. And then she just continued. And then she incorporated 3 other young women, 3 young African American. And it just got worse and worse. And finally, I just said, okay, you have my permission to leave.
Mm-hmm.
I need you to leave now. And I just said, I need you to leave. They weren't moving. I said, I need you to leave.
Mm-hmm.
The people should be here who are interested in being here.
Right.
I said, I don't do what I don't want to do. I said, so y'all shouldn't do what y'all don't want to do. But you know what? I will write you a note for your teacher telling them I gave you permission to leave and we good. But you don't have my permission to be disruptive. So this sister got in my face. I guess 7th grader. You trying to be our mama. You up in here acting like our mama. We ain't got to do it. I said, I am your mama. I am your mama.
Mm-hmm.
I am your mama. Because where I show up, where there are children, I am the mama. I'm supposed to be the mama in the room. But when I'm in a classroom, and there are 2 teachers in the room, and the 2 teachers aren't addressing these issues, and I have to address these issues because I'm grown enough to address them.
Right.
And to remind, like, like, you are a baby. You're 70 years old. You don't step to me like this. But the permissions that have been granted is what I'm saying. Who's talking to the children?
Right.
Who's talking to the children? What's being modeled around them, in front of them?
Mm-hmm.
You know? And I told him, I said, I'm ashamed of you. I said, I'm your elder. Mm-hmm. When I walk in the room, you speak for no other reason because I'm an old woman.
Right. Or a guest in your room. Yeah.
I said, the only part of this, I am not a trespasser at your school. You
Mm-hmm.
invited me. I'm in your house.
Mm-hmm.
How do you treat people come to your house? Mm-hmm. So I'm not getting away from your question, but there's so many layers to all of this. And the past few years have been very, very eye-opening for me. I mean, I hear these things from my educator friends. You know, white teachers were saying to me, well, we're not supposed to discipline the Black kids because then we get accused of being racist. I was like, well, you're not doing these people favors. I'm in a classroom when a 2nd grader tells the teacher to shut up and get out of his face. And I'm looking at her like to snatch his behind up and march into the principal's office. She just walks to the other. She just walks to the other side of the room. And I'm like, little boy, you don't talk to your teacher like that.
No.
But this was a norm. So see, the norms that I grew up with, the norms that I raised my children with, the norms that you might be raising your daughter with are very different than a lot of things that I'm experiencing. And then I meet these fabulous young children who are engaged and paying attention and doing podcasts in 10th graders who have their own podcasts and doing amazing, making books and making music and having protest. We have to get their attention, but we have to know how to get their attention. You know, I'm not the good messenger. I'm the grandma now. I'm the great grandma.
You're the auntie.
I'm the auntie. But your generation understands what auntie means. a lot of the new generation is like, Auntie, you need to go somewhere and sit down. You know, this ain't about you. I got this. So we need the young intellectuals. We need the young activists to not make it all about them. They have to make it about these children too.
Okay.
So for every 20-some-year-old who is working on making a documentary film, how about engaging some 10th graders to help you make it? You know, like the young people, the young leaders, you know, we have to pull one. We have to pull this next generation the same way that people my age have been pulling you. You know what I'm saying? When I
No, I
was
didn't.
younger, people my cousins' ages who they're, you know, slightly older than me, they were pulling me with them, exposing me to all of these things that were fascinating as a 10th grader. But, you know, we're all, I hate that we're role models, but we are all teachers. And I tell my elementary students this all the time. You're in the 3rd grade, but guess what? You are a teacher. I'm not a teacher. Oh, yeah. You got any sisters, brothers? How old are they? Oh, he's only 2. You're his teacher. And guess what? The 2-year-old is a 6-month-old. You know, the 6-month-old is going to learn how to walk because the 2-year-old is going to drag them around. They're going to teach them. So we are all teachers, and we're teaching all the time. And if we, I think, show up in life with this one premise of thinking, when we start to do things that we know aren't right, it's to always whisper in our own ear and say, the children are watching. The children are watching. The children are watching. The children are watching. Because they are watching.
Yeah.
They are watching.
And it doesn't have to be your own child for that to be
Yeah,
okay
and when that
either.
child said to me, you know, you ain't my mama, I said, oh, but I am your mama. You're all, you know, like right now, I'm the oldest person in this classroom. I said, and guess what? There are bad things that happen in schools like yours. You know, gunmen come in schools all over America and shoot little people like you up. Not to frighten you, but it's real. So guess what? If all of our little cell phones go off right now and they say, lock the doors, turn off the lights, get under the tables, the chairs, protect, you know, like secure yourself. I'm the mama in the room. But guess what? Everybody becomes a mama to each other because the mindset, the spirit should be, we are all going out of here alive. If we had to be in here for several days, I'd have you, okay, empty your backpacks. Let's see what kind of food we got going on. Who got some water? We don't have to ration out. Because we all want to be able. There are going to be some of us who are going to be freaking out. But who are the people in the room that can calm them down? So unfortunately, you know, there are schools now that have these drills for the unspeakable that we don't want to ever think will happen again. But it's happening over and over again.
This might be the safest our kids will be for some of us anyway
Right.
that don't have
Right.
abusive homes, of
So
course.
to have these real conversations and to say to Black children, you know, like, you know, right now you are validating every falsehood that has been woven around about you. You are right now delivering to them what they want. You know, and you should not fail just so you can say, I will not fail because you believe that's what I came here to do.
Right.
So there's a lot that has to happen with our young people, but I still say, who are they listening to? How do we package that message? Who are the most appropriate messengers? And I think it's people far younger than I am to pick up the mantle and, you know, and not to forsake us, not to leave us sitting in the corner, but it's a continuum. I'm over here, you all in the middle, and the babies are over here. It's a continuum.
Right.
How do you gather strength from me? How do they gather strength from you? How do we all keep it flowing?
Well, I want to be mindful of the time. I just realized it's over 7 o'clock.
Okay.
Where can everyone keep up with you, or even if any of your classes are open to the public, where they can find you, or what's the best place for them to look to find more from Miss Jaki Shelton Green?
So my books are available at Jakar Press and Blair Publishing. In addition to that, I have a brand new album coming out. It's going to
Mm.
be released on my birthday, Juneteenth this year. We planned big parties, but looks like we might be doing some virtual dancing.
I'm up
Uh,
for that.
it's a album of my poetry featuring Nina Freelon, Jennifer Evans, C.J. Suet, Charlotte Ammons, and it's yeah, like we're very, very excited about it. So that's going to release very, very soon, and I have a new website that's going to activate pretty soon. And when it's time to put up my calendar, when I can actually be moving around again, it will be the place where you can go to see where I might be doing speeches or public poetry readings.
Oh, great. Now, where can they find you until then? Is it better for Instagram, Facebook?
I'm on Instagram at Green Jaki, Jaki, at Green Jaki. That's where you can find me on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I have a Sister Right website, but it's pretty it's pretty
It needs to be revamped.
it's a mess right now. It's a
Okay.
mess. It's a mess. Yeah. So I'm around.
Okay.
You know, yeah. I don't give out my public email. I don't give out my
No,
email
no.
address to the public, but there will be
Understand.
information on my website, and I hope you'll check it out on JackieSheltonGreen.com.
Oh, okay. It is available.
Yeah. Well, it's not available, but it should be available in just a few days.
Oh, okay. I'll go ahead
So
and write it down then.
yeah. Title of the album is "The River Speaks of Thirst."
Joys of being dyslexic. The river speaks of thirst.
Mhm.
The spelling speaks with the E being before the S. So sorry.
There you go. The river speaks of thirst.
Okay. I want to bring this up just because you did mention about having the children be the role models, or not the role models, those be the voice. Next week, I'm going to have children on. It's so
Oh,
funny that you said that. I'm
lovely.
going to have a lot of different kids who are, there's a acting sister, their sisters that started their own talk show on Instagram. I'm going to have them on with their mom. And they've been interviewing everyone. Like, I
Sweet,
saw them
sweet.
interviewing Tiffany Haddish a couple of weeks ago. So I'm going to have them have an influencer on that, or traveling influencers that with their kids, they travel all around the world together
Sweet.
and blog about it. So
Mhm.
I'm going to make sure I'm going to ask all of them, who are they watching? Who are they listening to? And how can we reach them to make sure we don't lose them? Because
Yeah,
they're
your influence.
mainly around the 10 to 12, 10 to 14-year-olds that I'm interviewing
Lovely.
next week with their parents as well. So we can
Mhm.
learn how they got their start. But it's when you were saying that, I was like, how did you know? And I might have my co-host, my daughter, with me to give her some experience as well, since she's always talking about she wants to have her own channel. So I'm giving
I
her
love it.
a chance to do it with mine. I mean, what's the point of being the boss if you can't help your family?
Right. Well, and thank you for being the model of what effective communications looks like when we utilize all of the communication avenues that are available to us. And I'm just so happy you stepped inside of this. I mean, I can remember you doing many other things. But I'm so proud of you that you have embraced this, and not in a very narrow way, but in a very broad, very comprehensive, and a very sensitive way. Because there are podcasts and there are podcasts, there are radio shows and there are radio shows. But thank you for the depth and the substance that you continue to bring and put in front of us.
Oh, I appreciate that. It's totally my pleasure. When it was March 11th, well, March 6th, I left my radio job because I thought I was going to be working on a film. Then March 11th happened and everything closed down. I was like, well, I'm going to need a creative outlet. So that's what made me start. Actually, honestly, Angela Ray, I should give her a shout out because she called me asking me if I was still doing my show. And I was like, kinda. No, wasn't really doing it anymore. I quit my job. I was like, but I had that thought in my head already about starting
Yeah.
this. So then when she sent me some guests, I was like, well, that's all I needed. And I just took it from there. And of course,
Awesome.
reached out to everyone I knew that I would want to interview and share this platform with. And I'm really lucky that you guys have all said yes to me so far.
Well, we can't say no to you.
Oh, well, thank you.
We can't say no to you.
Yeah, well, in that case, next time you go to Morocco, no, I'm kidding.
I keep telling you, you just, it's just a word. When we can go.
That was one thing I did want to ask, though, that since you do so many public events, how do you feel with the pandemic? How is that going to change for you? Are you still gonna do touring?
Well, everything has been
What
shut
point?
down.
Right.
All of my traveling. Oh my God, my entire March, April, May, June, July, August was shut down.
Okay.
And I mean, everything canceled.
Okay.
But all of those entities have been contacting me saying, okay, let's shoot for November, let's shoot for October. And if we can't do it, then we'll shoot for February. So it's, it's just it's a crapshoot. I mean, we don't know. We just put the dates on the calendar, and if, okay, well, still can't travel, we just wait.
Okay.
Until, so I don't know. I don't feel comfortable right now. If I had to go do a residency at a public school at my age, I mean, I'm being very serious. I am fearful.
Yeah.
And my mom is 103 years old. She lives with us, and we've been very vigilant about not bringing germs to her, or this virus to her, since we don't know if we could be carriers at any different time.
Right.
So having said all of that, I have some decisions, but I'm doing a lot of online work. People have talked about, well, if you can't do this residency in person, the whole Saudi Arabia thing,
Right.
that happened today, then they started talking about, well, when this is over, you'll be in person with us. And I'm thinking, who knows when that will be? So
And there's a vaccine.
you can't plan anything.
Yeah,
I have friends in France, French Moroccans, who purchased tickets last summer, who were with them in Morocco, to come here. And, then everything is shut down. So, all of my stuff was shut down. Morocco, Ireland. One of my books just got reprinted in Italian. That was supposed to be a big release thing in Italy. Who knows when any of these things will happen.
Your publicist will be waiting whenever you're ready.
I know. You're so good. You're so good. Yeah. So that's where we are. It's just, I'm waiting. I don't know what my life is going to look like in person.
Right. I guess none of us really do. That's true.
I'm accepting everything that comes my way, for these online platforms. I'm trying to be available. It's exhausting, but I'm trying to be available as much as I can. I've not had to turn down anybody yet.
Well, I greatly appreciate all that you've done. And I love that you were able to do this interview with me, because I know how busy you are. And I really appreciate you taking the time and being here with us and speaking in a way that feels like a virtual hug.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I love you and your mom and your family.
and
Forever.
we love you.
I really loved your grandma. She was so good to me when I had to go to her part of North Carolina. She always embraced me very lovingly. So thank you, family. And, keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. I will. And I love you. And happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day to you, to your mom,
Thank you.
to everybody.
Well, you have a great rest of your weekend. I hope you get some relaxation and some R&R and enjoy your journals as well.
Okay, you too.
All right. I'll see you around.
All
Love
right.
you.
Bye-bye. Love you
Talk
too.
to you soon. Okay. Bye. Exactly what we all needed. That's Miss Jaki Shelton Green. Her website will be available in a couple of days, but I want to make sure that I also announce the winner for my first ever stay at home, stay safe. It's take care of yourself, self-help giveaway that I was doing on Instagram. I don't know if any of you guys were involved, But the winner is of all these wonderful prizes from Glow as well. Let me go down the list of all the different things they win. They're going to win a beauty kit from Glow Skin Beauty, which is their new kit that they just came out with. And they're going to win the Onata from Laura DiCarlo and a beautiful pair of Olivia Gatewood paper earrings. So I can't wait to announce it's Miss Sadie Artesonian. On Instagram, I will message her to let her know that she is the winner because she tagged and she followed everyone on the post, which was a big part of it. Some of the people had tagged a lot of people, but they weren't following everyone. There weren't many rules, but that was one of them. So again, congratulations to Sadie. And I will send you a message to let you know that you have won. And can't wait to talk to you guys about next week. We're going to have a lot of fun classes. I mean, a lot of fun classes. What am I talking about? A lot of fun shows next week. Monday, we're starting off with January Curry. She is a casting director. She worked on the movie Creed. That's right, with Michael B. Oh, I always want to say his last name's Jackson, or is it Johnson? Oh my gosh. You guys know what I'm talking about. Killmonger. That guy. Well, so she worked on Creed as a casting director. She's going to be my guest for the 6 o'clock spot. For the 2 o'clock spot, I have Ingrid Norman. She's going to help us all, hint, hint, me, with grooming our dogs. She's going to give us some tips because she's an in-home groomer. So she's used to doing it within our own, within other people's homes. So she can give us some tips for us who have pets that maybe need to go see the groomers and can't yet. And then, like I mentioned earlier with Miss Jaki Shelton Green, I was going to have all these young people next week. I'm going to have Sydney and Lauren. They're going to be here next week. I don't know why I'm saying Sydney and Lauren because it's not Sydney and Lauren. It's Sydney and Almay. They're going to be here next week. I'm going to have at 2 o'clock Tamika from Kidpreneurs. She's going to share about her non-for-profit that helps kids that are entrepreneurs. So if you have a young entrepreneur at home that needs some advice, she's the lady to help out. That's going to help out with that. I'm going to have Jessica Johnson on next week, who is an actress from, you've seen her in Queen Sugar, amongst many other notable movies and TV shows. Then Clarissa Lasky, she's an influencer mom who travels all around the country, all around the world. Well, used to travel all around the world with her children. And so we're going to hear from her and her kids about what's that like. And then Friday, he's coming back. I've had him before when I was doing my radio show, Gavin from Raising Dion, the actor from Raising Dion, as well as it's not so kid friendly, but I'll mention anyway. Righteous Gemstone, because it's filmed right near here in South Carolina. He's going to be on with his parents as well, where they're going to explain a little bit about how they got into the industry and also give advice and get tips. Great time to ask questions. So if you have any questions about getting into the industry, you definitely want to make sure that you tune in Monday with January Curry, because she's a casting director right here in the Southeast and can give us a lot of great tips. I mean, I know I'm going to update my resume and headshot. Just kidding. Anyway, hope you guys have a great weekend. Make sure you call your mom if you have, if your mom is still with us, of course. Make sure you call them. It's Mother's Day. Check in on them. Check on your aunts, all the different people in all the people in your life who are your moms. Like Jaki Shelton Green said, whoever is the oldest woman in the room, that's your mom. So give them a call, check on them, make sure they're feeling extra special this Sunday. And I will see you guys Monday. Okay, awkward bye time while I find the stop button.